Good afternoon, everybody. We're here for the City of Erie Historic Review Commission meeting, December 1st, 2025. We will now start out with a roll call. Dave Brennan, I'm here. Secretary Melinda Meyer. Commissioner Jean Craig Pepper. She's online. Is she there? Jean, are you there?
Hey, Jean. Maybe a gentle reminder. Cooper, how are you? Fine, thank you.
Jean, just confirming you're there? I mean, she's on, right? I could see her. I heard her speaking earlier.
I think she is there.
She's there. Okay, she's there. We'll confirm that. And Commissioner Mark Ambon.
Hi, here.
Then the ex officio members, Executive Director Schnippert is here. Director Spry is here. Assistant Planner Cooper Moore is here. And so we'll get moving here. First of all is public comment. Do we have anyone here to speak for public comment?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon,
Kathy
Kathy.
Schaff, Erie, Pennsylvania. I received an email letter from Dee Luckett from the Pennsylvania Heritage Foundation, and they are... Hello? Oh.
Hi, Jean.
Hi, Jean. Thank you.
They are looking for a person to be on their board from northwestern Pennsylvania area. So I sent them some information of what you all do, and I don't know if you're interested or not, but I actually applied to be on it, and I don't know if that will happen or not, but I found it very interesting. So taking care of Pennsylvania's historical markers and things throughout Pennsylvania. So
Great, yeah,
they
absolutely.
want representation from northwestern Pennsylvania.
Yeah, we definitely need that, definitely. So I appreciate that, Kathy,
Thank you.
definitely. Thank you so much. Anyone else here to speak? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next portion of the meeting with the approval of past meeting minutes and also the certificate of appropriateness report. We did get meeting minutes a little bit later, so we're going to hold those. We get a chance to look at them, really, to approve that in the January meeting. But there's a COA report, Matthew, is that correct?
Hello? 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 Hello?
Hi, Jean.
It's like a Wes Craven movie.
Jean, can you hear us? Can we hear you?
Is it working? 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 Is it working?
It is working. We can hear you, but in
It's on
stereo.
reverb. That's what happens. See? No good deed. Oh. Good thing this isn't being televised.
While they're working on that, we have received no certificate of appropriateness applications.
Repeat that, Matthew. I couldn't hear you. Sorry.
We haven't received any certificate of appropriateness.
Okay, so there's really no report, no COAs. Okay, great. So we'll move on to the next item here. which would be the, any public correspondence?
We have received none.
Okay, no public correspondence. Moving pretty quickly here. Next on our agenda is the new business. And I know we have a nomination for the Erie Cemetery, and there's determination of reasonable cause and also recommendation. Matthew, do you want to give a kind of introduction to this proposal?
I can, and if you don't mind, I'll move. And also just give me 1 second so we can ensure that Commissioner Crickpepper is with us.
Do you want me to advance?
No, thank you.
Is that the Scott Mausoleum? That's the original Scott.
Yep, that's it.
That's the originals, not mixed, different family.
I'm not sure.
It's they were like a coal. Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, so it's been a while since we've done this. We received a nomination from the Erie Cemetery Association for Erie Cemetery. So what I will do today is go through the overview of what the process looks like, what the findings were from the nomination, and then my recommendations as staff. So as you can see, it's an old postcard of the Scott Mausoleum. Yay! Erie Cemetery, as you can see here, is located where the little orange marker is within the city of Erie. As a neighborhood overlay, it lies to the south of Little Italy and borders Arbor Heights. Here is a site plan of the cemetery itself. In the nomination, each one of those circles and arrows corresponds to a photograph. So it has been fully documented, and if you go through the nomination itself, you'll be able to see kind of how each one of those corresponds to an image in the nomination. I did pull some of those images out that are, I think, a bit more representative of the cemetery itself. Here you'll see the lodge, which is now the office on the left, as well as the main entry gates.
It's a great place.
And this is just inside the entryway. Here you have an image of a mausoleum, some headstones, also the chapel in the background.
It's great.
And then this is much further into the cemetery. You can see some of the design patterns that are really prominent throughout the cemetery and inherent to the rural cemetery movement. So the application process, or the nomination process, has multiple steps. So today, there are two. There's the Historic Review Commission, where you are looking at a determination of reasonable cause. Hi, Jean, can you hear us?
Hello?
Hello?
Maybe her speakers have an issue.
I don't think her speaker isn't on.
Oh,
I could text her.
no, that's okay. Cooper was.
Hello?
We'll give it just a moment to see if we can work out her technical problems.
Hello? Hello?
We're still here. It might be advantageous to, thank you.
My speaker is on.
I texted her to turn her speakers on.
Okay. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, we'll end that. And I think that Director Spry is trying to call her now. Put her on speaker that way. Thank you. No dice. We'll continue on, I think, as we try to get Commissioner Craig Pepper back with us. So as I was saying, your responsibility today is twofold. So as a Historic Review Commission, you first need to determine whether or not there's reasonable cause to accept the nomination for Erie Cemetery, and then your responsibility is then to make a recommendation to City Council. The Planning Commission will also, thank you. The Planning Commission is also responsible for looking at the nomination through a very different lens. They're looking at it through how it fits in with all the different neighborhood and city plans that are applicable. They're meeting on the 16th to consider the nomination. After we get a recommendation from you as HRC and from the Planning Commission, we'll then schedule time for it to go to City Council. And City Council will hold their own public hearing and then ultimately make their determination about whether or not it becomes listed on the City of Erie's historic register. To give you a very brief overview of the cemetery, so what you'll see here on the right-hand side is a map. So you can see the design patterns of burial sites, of pathways, and how it intersects with the topography, which is all integral to the cemetery's significance. The original idea for the cemetery was born in October 1846, and when several prominent Erieites got together and tried to acquire the land for the cemetery, their initial bid was unsuccessful, and the petition was revived in 1849. When it was expanded, more money was acquired, the land was purchased. Ultimately, the Erie Cemetery was incorporated in 1850. They were then hired a landscape design architect to lay out the initial burial plots, and that work actually occurred mostly over the winter and spring of 1850 to 1851, and then the official opening of Erie Cemetery was in 1851. What's particularly, I think, interesting about Erie Cemetery's history is not just this snippet, but the circumstances that led to its creation. So if you go through the nomination, the history lays out a lot of burial history within the city of Erie. And before the creation of this cemetery, every individual churchyard had their own graveyard, but to the point where they were all full. And so part of Erie Cemetery's history was kind of innovations in city planning by which this cemetery was opened, and then bodies were exhumed from graveyards downtown and then moved into Erie Cemetery. This is a process that occurred over the course of decades, but very much speaks to how citizens at the time were viewing health, sanitation, or also religious practice. And so a lot of sections of Erie Cemetery actually have headstones and markers that predate the existence of this cemetery because they were taken from other churches and other graveyards.
That's why it's non-denomination.
Yes, from its inception, it has always been non-denominational.
You're welcome.
So there are several different criteria that Erie Cemetery meets that tie back into what is in our ordinance. Criteria B is that it is associated with the lives of persons significant in Erie's past. In this instance, it's associated with Emma Hay. Emma Hay was one of the earliest, if not the first, women to serve as a superintendent of a major American cemetery. This happened after the death of her husband, who was the previous superintendent. And her work was from 1892 to 1916. She lived on site. You'll see this is a picture of her on bicycle. Behind her is the previous iteration of the caretaker's cottage. And so what's particularly, I think, notable is that there are other instances of women serving in the funeral care industry, or what we now know as the funeral care industry prior to this, but not in this kind of capacity. There was a lot of there were women who were head of funeral homes, and there were also women who, during the Civil War, were able to act as superintendents while their husbands were away. But the circumstances by which Emma was able to work here was exceptional because it was active. So she was actively hired. We have records from the Cemetery Association of what an absolutely wonderful job she was doing. And there isn't a comprehensive list within the Commonwealth or even the nation of different cemetery directors or superintendents. But from the research that we were able to pull together, it seems very clear that she is one of, if not the earliest women to serve in this role. So, very cool. It also meets criteria C, and criteria C is that it embodies the distinctive characteristics of a type, period, or method of construction, or that represent the work of a master, or that possess high artistic values, or that represents a significant and distinguishable entity whose components may lack individual distinction. Very long-winded, but what this means that is the cemetery itself is the work of a design movement. So it is, without question, the exemplar of the rural cemetery movement within the city of Erie. So like everything else in history, designs and ideas change over time. And when you look about how cemeteries were designed, what is significant is at this period of time in kind of national and even international history, there was a focus on having less of these individual churchyards, as we were talked about before, and more of thought given to expansive spaces that were outside of city limits, that were almost a hybrid of cemeteries and parks. And so what we see is that the design of the cemetery, and of Erie Cemetery, incorporates a lot of the aesthetics of this movement. So, for example, if you're in the cemetery, there's only one street that is perfectly straight. All of the others are winding paths around different plots that are circular or semicircular in nature. There's also a lot of thought given to the topography of the site. So on the north section of the cemetery, it's relatively flat and integrated into the surrounding neighborhood. On the south side, there's a rise. And that rise then was developed to be Mausoleum Row. So a road kind of goes up the hillside and is dotted with different mausoleums and different gravesites. So it's meant to be a pleasant experience, that people would enjoy going and visiting gravesites, and that there was enough room to also take in nature. And what we've seen throughout Erie Cemetery's history is that that is exactly the role that it serves, and even today very much serves as a space where the dead are buried and also a neighborhood park. And that brings us to the last criteria, which is criteria F, that it exhibits a unique location or distinctive physical appearance or presence representing an established or familiar visual feature of a neighborhood, community, or of Erie. By this, it is a distinctive visual feature not only of Little Italy, but of the city itself. I think we would all be very hard-pressed to see a photograph of Erie Cemetery and not be able to immediately identify it as Erie Cemetery. I think when we sat down and started this presentation, every last one of us said, well, that's the Scott Mausoleum. And it's achieved this level of accessibility to all Erieites that isn't necessarily incumbent on every cemetery that's within the city of Erie. In no small part, Erie Cemetery also has put together an extensive programming throughout the course of the year where people are invited in, talk about all different sorts of things, from people who are buried there to architectural types of mausoleums. They have an event called Dining Among the Departed, where every year a dinner is held in the middle of the cemetery. And so what might be considered, I think, a bit unusual to have a cemetery that has a programming component to it. Erie Cemetery very much acknowledges the place that it serves within the community, and that it is open to all people, and that there are different avenues to accessing both the place and the people who are interred in Erie Cemetery. There's a lot of text here, but this all gets to the point of integrity. So any site that comes before us, the HRC is responsible for determining whether or not there is enough historic integrity to the site in order to convey its significance. The shorthand version of this is if someone who was alive in 1850 or 1860 after the cemetery was created were transported to today, would they be able to understand that this is still Erie Cemetery? And yes. It still very much serves that same function. It has all the same design components, although there have been additions over time and changes within the several buildings that are in the cemetery's footprint. They all tie back into the original intention of the cemetery, which was to create a semi-rural curated space for people to enjoy. So that brings us to determination of reasonable cause. But before we continue down that path, I know that we have a representative here from the Erie Cemetery Association. And so I will pause my role in this and yield the floor back to you, Chairperson.
So yeah, are they needing to speak? I'm going to speak now for the that'd be great.
Yeah.
If they could come to the speaker, that'd be great. We'd love to hear more information or any other item that Matthew didn't share with us.
Yeah.
Well, Matthew did a great job. Hi, I'm Becky Weiser, and I'm with the Erie Cemetery Association. We own 3 cemeteries in Erie County: Laurel Hill, Winter Green Gorge, and Erie Cemetery. Erie is by far the oldest of the 3 cemeteries that we administer. And it's an exciting place to be because, you know, Matthew dealt about our design, but we also have some structures, Richardsonian Romanesque buildings that are found in the cemetery, and we're a who's who of notables that used to live in Erie. And he had mentioned more than once about our mausoleums. If you follow us on Facebook, we now have a new series called Mausoleum Mondays, where we talk a little bit about each mausoleum, some of the symbolism, architecture, as well as the people that are interred inside. And it's been a fun look at names that maybe we've heard, maybe we haven't heard, but just trying to bring to life the space that we have at Erie Cemetery. We are still an active burial space. We have over 55,000 people in Erie Cemetery right now, and we still have some space, not a lot, so if you're interested, call me, because it's filling up. Because it is beautiful and people enjoy it. And we are trying to make it more of an engaging space for the community right now. And that's one of the reasons why we're going through this application process with you, is we want to be recognized by the city as being not only historic, but also a beautiful place for preservation. We're doing everything we can in our powers. As you can imagine, it's very expensive running a cemetery. But as you walk through, you may notice some of the monuments have fallen over time. We have equipment now to raise them. Do we have the manpower necessarily? Not always. We get busy, but we plan on doing that. We have volunteers that work with gravestone cleaning, so not to have it look dingy, but to have it look fresh. And we had started a new program last summer called Adopt and Earn. As we were walking through Erie Cemetery, as I was, you found over time people had placed these beautiful concrete or metal flower urns. Well, they were abandoned, they were orphaned. So we found adoptive parents to plant flowers in those urns, and I thought maybe 20 people would sign up. We had over 100 people sign up. We had one gentleman sign up to adopt 24 urns. And he felt not only was he giving back to the community at large and making it a more beautiful space, but by honoring those who have gone before us, people he didn't know, he wasn't related to. So we have a variety of initiatives now to maintain our space and to welcome the community into our space because we feel it is definitely worth preserving. Are any questions?
I love what you
Any
guys do.
questions?
Oh, yeah, I love what you guys do with that cemetery. You're active and you do tours and
We do.
vampire things and kind of fun things. I mean, you do a lot of very cool things.
Thank you. Yeah, our Ghosts and Legends tours at Halloween
Yeah.
this year, God bless you, 883 guests this
Really?
year. 883 people paid to come through. And some of the stories were factual, some were, well, you know, stories. But we have, just to give you an idea, we have the Witches' Circle
Yes.
course. Well, I have a volunteer, a very talented researcher, who's researching the real story of the 60 people buried in the Witches' Circle. And we're going to offer that tour next summer. It's one of our lawn chair tours. So we invite people with mobility issues, or you just don't feel like you just want to chill. And you can bring your lawn chair, sit, and hear stories of these people. We had one last year of our Section A, which is where Alexander Brewster is buried. He is our first burial. And again, a volunteer created, I mean, they're all true stories about these people. And we just took our lawn chairs and went around the circle and heard those things. So we're always trying to come up with new ideas. Erie Cemetery recently joined an unofficial organization called the Alliance of Historic Cemeteries. So we are now attending Zoom meetings to find out what other old cemeteries are doing to preserve themselves, to engage the community, to share their history. And we're excited to be a part of that as well.
You know, I saw so many pictures with horses in the pictures. I wonder if a horse-drawn carriage tour through the cemetery would be something that could raise revenue and interest in the, especially if it was kind of a guided tour, but I would go by like a not a hayride, but like a hayride.
Yeah, definitely. That has crossed our radar. Golf cart tours have come up, picnics. Oh, another thing that we're working on for the spring is our sunken garden. If you're familiar with the cemetery, years ago they had this giant tulip display, and it's near the pergola. Well, over time, the tulips went away. We don't have the manpower to plant, what did they have, a couple 100,000 tulips. We have some, though. That's another story. So now we are putting the money into redoing the sunken garden into more of an event space. So we're in the process of hiring some landscape designers to come so that the space can be used for picnics and for other kinds of events as well. But going back to the tulips, we are participating with the Sisters of St. Joseph and their tulip initiative for the Little Italy neighborhood. So we planted 500 tulips this year. So in the spring, please drive by. It'll be gorgeous. So
Is there any other questions from any member of the commission? Jean, can you hear me? Any questions? Hearing none, I did have one quick question. I know from touring the space before, the buildings are designed by, famous architects of their time. Is that part of this application, or is it just, it's all together, but it wasn't really discussed?
It definitely, it does show up, and you're absolutely right. Several of the buildings were designed by Alden and Harlow, same architects that did the library, well, former library here, very prominent Pittsburgh architects. It's absolutely part of the application. They weren't called out as individually significant because it was looking at this through the lens of the entire site.
Okay.
So
So that's just one piece of the puzzle, but it's really the entire cemetery itself is the asset.
It is,
Okay.
and the different components that make the cemetery. I think that it helps to put things in perspective for just how large the cemetery is.
It's huge.
If we were to kind of take it from Little Italy and then put it in the middle of town, it would actually stretch from this building to the Bayfront connector. So it is an absolutely extensive space, which is why the nomination approaches it as a site. Because it is one parcel of land, but it's the entire parcel that has this significance.
Yep. Okay, great. If there's no other questions, we thank you so much for all the information, and Matthew for your presentation of the information. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is anyone else here from the public? Need anyone else to say anything? I guess, Kathy, you're the only one. I guess there's no one else here, so I just want to at least ask the question. So with that said, would any commissioner member like to make a motion to approve?
I would definitely make that motion.
So
And Matthew has carefully articulated a motion up on the screen there. I don't know if you want to.
I would move to determine that there is a reasonable cause that the Erie Cemetery meets the qualifications to become a City of Erie historic landmark as it conveys significance under criteria B, C, F, and holds significant historic integrity.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second, Melinda Myers seconds. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, the majorities have it. Thank you. So it passes.
And now it goes to City Council eventually?
Not yet. So there are two steps of this process.
Okay.
And they are combined in this meeting out of consideration and consultation with the chair, because this site was one that was identified during the survey that was conducted earlier in Little Italy as something that was potentially eligible as a historic site. So because there was a high likelihood that there's reasonable cause, we decided to take these two actions and put them together into one meeting. You in the future, or we have the opportunity to divide these steps out so that we might have one meeting in which the HRC is determining a reasonable cause, and then another where we're able to hold public comment and then a recommendation to council. So your next step in this is to make a recommendation to council. And I provided some suggested language for what that motion might look like as well.
Okay, thank you, Matthew, for clarifying.
Again, I would so move.
Would someone first like to make the motion for the recommendation to City Council?
I would. Read it? Okay. I so move we provide a positive recommendation to the City Council of Erie Cemetery be listed on the City of Erie's Register of Historic Places as it conveys historic significance through criteria B, C, and F, and maintains significant historic integrity to convey its significance.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Melinda Meyer seconds. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it. So thank you, that passes also. So we've approved the determination of reasonable cause and also the recommendation to City Council.
That's great.
Okay. Thank you for that. We'll move on to the next item here. There are no certificate of appropriateness submissions. So we're going to move forward to the old business section. And the first item is an update on the State Street National Register Historic District.
Okay, so with the State Street National Register District, as we talked about at the last meeting, there was a contractor, Markowski, that was selected to do the work. They held a public meeting in this chamber just 2 weeks ago. That sounds about right. With an opportunity to walk through what the process looks like, kind of where they're at the moment. They had proposed some suggestions in terms of what criteria they're looking at the State Street nomination for, and some prospective boundaries as well. It was fairly well attended, and I would say that we got a lot of questions that came afterwards from other owners and business representatives along State Street that have been pretty productive conversations.
Did they get a lot of responses following, Matthew? I know I emailed kind of a question that I had, which they confirmed pretty promptly. So,
Yeah, because it's a partnership, I know they got some specific questions, so did EDP, and so did we. So lots of questions that came out of the woodwork. And I would expect that over the course of the next several months, up until yet another kind of public hearing that we'll have before the nomination moves forward, there'll be even more questions that come to light.
okay, great. Move on to the next item is the City Hall National Register nomination. Is there any updates or anything to discuss there with the commission members?
Unfortunately, no. I was expecting at this point to have at least feedback from our State Historic Preservation Office, but have yet to receive an update.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from any commission members? I don't see any, so we'll
No.
move forward. The next is the discussion on Article 952, honorary signage, draft proposed amendments. I know that was sent, Matthew had sent the draft to all the members of the commission. So I don't know, Matthew, do you want to start out that discussion, and then we can kind of get into any question any commission member may have?
Yeah, very briefly, because I know that we did spend some time talking about this at our last session. So the amendments to this ordinance are founded in our historic preservation plan that recommends the creation of a historic marker program. And it also suggests, and we have talked about, creating a plaque program for individual landmarks within the city. So anyone that's gone through this nomination process and been listed on the City of Erie's historic register would be eligible to have a plaque put on a building or put on site. And so what is proposed in those amendments is exactly what that process would look like, and what responsibility the HRC would have in adjudicating applications, and what role City Council would have in granting the applications. With the historic marker program, it looks very similar to our nomination program, where an application would be put together, submitted to the HRC for your consideration. The HRC would make a recommendation to City Council. City Council would ultimately make the final decision about whether a historic marker is granted. For the landmark plaque program, it would be available to anyone that has already been through the nomination process with us. So any landmark that has been listed on the city's registry of historic places would be eligible to put in an application for that plaque and then given guidance on where it could be placed.
Okay, great, thank you. Was there any comments or questions from commission members on the proposed amendments? Seeing none, would someone like to make a motion to approve the proposed amendments?
I would be happy to make that motion.
Mark, you say you want to make
I would
a
be
motion?
happy to make that motion that we approve the amendments.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second to approve the draft proposed amendments for honorary signage? Do we have a second?
It's you.
Wendy, are you? You're second, okay. Okay, Melinda Myers is going to second. Those in favor of this proposed amendments, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Hopefully, can Jean hear us? I'm guessing
Yeah,
her silence is
I'm worried about it, yeah.
okay, but I haven't heard from, can she hear us? I just want to make sure for the record.
Jean? Okay, we just wanted to confirm that you can still hear us and that we can hear you.
Yes, I'm listening.
Okay.
Yes, and I texted you a vote on the cemetery. Do you want me to just say verbally the cemetery? I vote yes for the cemetery and yes for this.
Yes, please.
Okay, so
Okay.
we have it in
There you
favor.
go.
And those opposed? Seeing none, the ayes have it, so the draft proposed amendments pass.
Thank you. The next step of this is that we will work with our city solicitor and make sure that the amendments are in the format that is required of city council, and we'll send it off to city council for final consideration.
Okay, let's move to the next item, which is the Historic Preservation Program, the goals and objectives update.
I'm moving back. Sorry, it's weird to contort your body and also to, yeah. So, this was born out of our meeting last month to dig a little bit into kind of where we are in the direction of the program in general. Some of you had mentioned that over the past couple of months, the program has changed quite a bit from what it has looked like in the past. And so I wanted to visualize this a bit, and what you'll see in front of you is the overall timeline for how the Historic Preservation Program has evolved. So in 2005 is when the enabling language was adopted by City Council and put into place. So the small blue dot is either the HRC or the precursor to the HRC. So that might look like a task force, that might look like council, and the work that has been done by this group over time and how it's changed over time. The pink circle is the Historic Preservation Program, which is all-encompassing and really centered around the staff. So at this point, I know we've had staff come and go over the years, and they've taken on different responsibilities and different kind of components of the program. So the way that I hope that the conversation and this visualization will illustrate is that the HRCs always has a core responsibility, and the core responsibility centers on landmarking, reviewing certificate of appropriateness applications, conducting education and informing others, and also informing the city's preservation policy. And those 4 bullets have been the core, I think, of largely what we have done since 2019. The staff has come and gone, and the staff has been able to take on fairly large projects like the HBIG program, the city survey, and then within the past year or so, a lot of new initiatives. And a lot of this has to do with the ability that we have had to staff this program. In the past 5 months, we've done a lot. Over the course of the next year, we're going to do even more. We'll just do question by slide, if that's okay, because I don't want to get too far down. But does anyone have any questions or comments on the overview?
Well, it's interesting to see this layout and overview, because it's good to see it in front of us. So I appreciate putting that together. And again, it's the first time I've seen it, so I'm still trying to take it all in.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's pretty big, especially because the HRC itself has done so much of the policy work to bring us to this point. The creation of the HRC itself, the historic preservation plan that was adopted, and I would say even the work around the survey and the HBIG, those are really foundational pieces that are able to kind of shape what the program was and how it manifested. And I know that with working with like Chris and Heather, they were able to take on key components of that. And even in the interim, working with Director Spry and also Cooper Moore, able to take different components of this as well. And so having a dedicated person in this role is really what allows the program to continue to expand in a way that this body, that the HRC, the 4 of you, can't necessarily do yourselves,
but it's incumbent on the city in order to execute all of the policy that has been put into place by the HRC. So, which is why we start getting into a lot of the kind of proposals for what to do next. And I, like, they're in the circle and below the circle on this, but there are other slides where we can kind of pick that apart a little bit more.
And a lot of it really has to do with how much funding that we have to do the, of course, is to have staff to do this, to take these extra efforts, but to be able to bring in the professionals to do the surveys and to do all that important work. I mean, if we didn't have that resource to do that, we couldn't do it ourselves, so.
Absolutely. And a large part of this has been, especially this year, working through the budgeting session with City Council. And they're still very much going through the budgeting process. But there have been, a substantial amount of effort put into what the historic preservation and what the planning department budget looks like. That's mapped against different grant opportunities and other projects that have come up through basically community engagement. So I put this together for what is our priority. So my priority in this role has been centered on civic resources. So the Historic Preservation Program very much exists because the city has willed it into existence, and that the city itself is responsible for a number of historic assets that tie into the public good. And when we look at the different kinds of buildings, the different ways that the city invests its resources, there is a very much an overlap. And that overlap looks like what we did this year in pursuing a designation for City Hall, because then it opens up funding opportunities in historic preservation to continue to maintain City Hall. Looking into the year ahead, that's going to expand a bit. And so in addition to that, we'll be looking at the city's history of firefighting and the fire department buildings, either current or former, and then looking to establish that as a multi-property documentation, which is listed on the National Register. We'll be doing the same thing for parks, and that's actually an outgrowth of our park plan that has been in process now for, I was going to say, like, we're not quite coming up on the year, but close to it. Parks are also historic assets in the same way that the city's firefighting history is a public asset and part of the common good. So
Does that include the museum, the firefighters museum?
it does. And they were an integral community partner in thinking through this, because that's a city-owned building and
Right.
it's run by a nonprofit that's
Right.
completely devoted to the city's firefighting history. So yes. And the parks has been tied into the community engagement plan or I should say the community engagement sessions. So a lot of what we've heard through our community engagement sessions is that the parks are historic resources, but none are currently listed or acknowledged as having a historic component. So we are applying for funding from DCNR next year in order to be able to hire a researcher and put together a comprehensive narrative of Erie's parks and have them listed on the National Register. So a good way to think of this is that it's the city's program. We're applying it to ourselves, to our resources, to the things that the city already keeps up for everybody in Erie. And that by doing so, it creates funding opportunities to make sure that we're treating these historic assets in a sensitive way, and that we're also have assistance in doing so. Especially with parks, with things like firefighting, it helps to create a narrative that is comprehensive and accessible, and that also enables us to be better stewards of these different assets because we're able to talk about their history in a formal way. We're also able to do really fun things like hang plaques on buildings and designate them as historic. And then that last bullet about art, archives, and placemaking, that's kind of like the outer rim of what I do. And so the city has an extensive archival collection, and that looks like all kinds of different things. Lots of photographs, lots of documents, lots of maps and things like that. And so I've been able to start making an inventory of what the city has. Some of it's here, some of it's over at the Hagen Archives, and get a better sense of what our archives look like. And we've also had a partnership with RACE to go through a lot of what their archives look like, and to digitize the hundreds upon hundreds of photographs from the 1960s of that redevelopment period, with the ultimate hope of making those publicly available and like researchable and accessible. It's kind of falls into the educational component of historic preservation. It's kind of one thing that the city has all of these different things, but we need to think about how we can tie them together, make them accessible, and use them as a planning tool. For placemaking, the hope is in the future, and the not so distant future, that we're able to start looking at these different spaces as well and thinking through what we can do to make them more accessible. So first on my docket is our lobby. Going through the lobby, identifying the different kind of things that are there, what needs to continue to be there, if there's an opportunity to do more curation that ties into specific events and initiatives, not just of this program, but of the city. So for example, if we are hiring a researcher to put together a comprehensive history of Erie's firefighters, then it would behoove us to also put in some kind of exhibit about the items, the documents, the stories that we're able to glean together, and then make it publicly accessible. So lots of different components there. Also, a priority for us is plan execution. So as we talked about earlier, what I mean by plan execution is that we have lots of different plans that have been put into place. The historic preservation plan, the parks plan. So we're using that as a roadmap for what comes next. And so when we look at the recommendations that come out of those plans, it's kind of like looking at it through like a sieve, and that you put that together with community input, and then you also put that together with what is, again, a priority, looking at our kind of civic resources, and then seeing what kind of rises to the top. So that's why, for us, the kind of first real push for next year is in all of these different multi-property listings for places. And then finally, partnership. So for us as the city, it's very important to always be a listener and always understand what different organizations, what different individuals want and need out of this program. And we have people that will come to us and say, just like we saw earlier, you know, we're responsible for this massive cemetery. We need help putting together a nomination. Can you work with us on that? Can you work with us about being able to identify different grants and funding opportunities that come along with preservation? So that is happening on a much kind of larger level. But even though our central priority is always civic resources, that there's the door is always open for community partners and to be responsive to whatever is expressed as a need by members of the community. There's a lot of stuff, so I'll put a pin in it and see if there's questions or if you want to talk through any of this.
Matthew, I was going to ask any questions from the members of the commission?
I mean, it's a lot.
Ask you first.
It's
Mark?
a lot. It's not a question. It's a lot. It's a big lift.
Yep. There's not been a lot of rest these past 6 months. And, you know, it's been really fulfilling, because what I have encountered again and again with conversations either here in City Hall or within the community is there's absolutely a need and there's a desire. I think that I'll skip ahead a little bit, but no. Current initiatives, community partnerships. Wait, that's it. These are all the different landmark requests that we've gotten over the past 4 months. It's about 12 different sites. Some are individual homes, some are like larger buildings that take up an entire block, like the Menor Corps or the Labor Temple. There's absolutely a need. And it's very helpful to kind of be able to balance all of these different things, because with these larger projects that are centered on parks, that are centered on firefighting history, to be able to hire a researcher to take on kind of those projects enables me to be able to focus my attention and energy on serving the community, because it's a lot easier to have a one-on-one relationship with somebody over their particular site if we're able to meet on site, if we're able to pick up a phone and talk to each other or see each other like at Giant Eagle. But for when it comes to things like parks and fire history, I mean, those are much bigger initiatives. So when I look at kind of how this role functions, it's very much ensuring that those larger projects are being done by contractors, being done by other people, and then providing public opportunity for input and engagement in those. But at the same time, making sure that kind of one by one, if people have a specific landmark request, that we're able to help them through that process.
When you say request, did you receive an application? Is that, it's an application?
Some of these have been applications, some of them have just been a
Inquiry?
Yeah,
Okay.
or an inquiry, or a come visit my site, tell me what you think, and also can you help me put this nomination together? It's, I mean, as all of you know, a very labor-intensive process.
I mean, they are posted on the website as the past applications.
Yep.
So they could go to those for examples of what,
Yep.
so that's a good thing.
Yep, and we were able to put together some templates and some other things as well for them. I'm going to go backwards a little bit, because I did want to talk about what came up yesterday and putting some like programmatic boundaries around it. Because when I look back at our plan and also the timeline that Cooper was able to put together for all of us, you know, there are some specific items that are in either the plan or like the workflow that are better suited with other partners. So a few of them, like you know, offer a workshop with property owners on nominating listing buildings in the National Register, or creating an online toolkit for property owners interested in nominating properties to the National Register. So yes, we could absolutely do that, but it's much easier for us to just bring in the State Historic Preservation Office and say, you know, this is something that they can help with, that they're staffed to help with. We can put on a workshop, or we can direct people to them to help with like this particular thing, while we're kind of reconfiguring and focusing on projects that are tied in directly to our program. Sorry. So there's always this reevaluation of things that we had.
It's like David Lynch. I mean, it's,
In many different ways.
Is that someone online?
Yeah, that was yes, Commissioner.
it's like Twin Peaks.
Prioritization. This is
One thought, Matt, if I could just kind of throw it in there. I know you're
Yeah.
kind of throwing things around here. And I think it's embedded in a lot of this is like the education piece. Because there's, even just what we've done, I mean, you ask 99% of the people in the area, they're going to go, I didn't know they're doing that.
Yep.
You know, but then just the general topics of what does a district mean, what does a nomination mean, all those basic things, I still think that's going to need to be part of, again, not saying that you haven't thought about that, because there's a lot of huge goals in there.
Right.
But I think that needs to go with everything we do.
You know, I will say, you know, just administering the organization that I'm administering, we've been there 14 years. I bump into vastly more people who have never heard of us than have heard of us. And we have spent obscene amounts of money in advertising. We've been on TV, we've been in the newspaper, and still So, I mean, to your point, it's just, I mean, we actively try to get people involved in our institution, and it's difficult. I mean, I'm just starting to almost turn the corner that people know what it is.
And the thing is that it's so important to get that education out, because then you see people that support you, or you get the input that
Sure.
helps you improve, or
Everything.
whatever that may be.
But I think you're right. 99% of the people would have never heard of this. It's important to us because we're involved in it, but the overwhelming majority have never heard of it.
Yeah.
I mean, even the redevelopment authority, I would imagine that you bump into people all the time that say, I never even knew the city of Erie had this, and it's been around a long time.
Or they confuse it with the county, or who
Or
knows?
whatever. Yeah, it's just they don't know.
I'd
don't
also
think-
note that this is a bit of a cultural shift internally at City Hall
Yeah.
that is occurring, maybe first and most importantly. The fact that we have a program that's
Sure.
building itself up, we have some consistency with the board and with staff, and infusing
That enthusiasm.
infusing the enthusiasm also here at City Hall, but also with everything that we do. It should have a focus around these parts. So at least, especially in planning, but that goes for Public Works. I mean, we've had conversations with Public Works and with code enforcement, and so that shift internally is beginning. And I mean, I know that it had started, as you saw in the circles, but the consistency and ability to now push that forward internally is.
So even within this structure.
Yeah, I mean, we have the control here that, at least a little bit, to be able to influence here. I think that shift, though, is essential first and foremost. And I know, I don't want to jump ahead, but I'll just mention it, and then when I get to my piece, is the transition from the administrations.
Correct.
We're very cognizant of making sure that this new administration understands not only the importance of planning, but the importance of historic preservation. So when it comes to my portion of the meeting, I'd like to just note that. That's what I wanted to talk about. So
I did give the mayor-elect a tour of our facility, and I did mention historic preservation
Yes.
to her. So I tried to do my bit, but I'm saying we shouldn't flag our energy or our efforts and set positive goals and big goals, but the expectations of, and I don't think we should be diminished by the results of our work because of the expectation. So, but at the same time, it's very, very hard to get the word out, no matter what you do, and you pay. Even if we have a budget for it, and we can't do it. I mean, it's hard, and we have thousands of people on our Facebook page and thousands of people on our website and emails, and I just know that this is a hard thing to do. Do it, but it's hard to do.
It is. I mean, especially this program is new.
It's new, right?
I mean, I joke around a lot when I'm in meetings with people because everyone seems to have an understanding of what City Hall does, right? Like, everybody's a penguin. They all do this thing, and I'm walking around like a flamingo, which is my joke of like, what is that guy, and what does he do, and what is historic preservation?
You could actually get a flamingo outfit.
I would.
And that,
I'd wear it for
I
next
think
Halloween.
that would be a good step forward.
And as all of you know, historic preservation does different things. It's a planning tool, it's a redevelopment tool, it's a storytelling tool. It can be many things to many people, which is why.
But it's an economic development tool, and I think that
Yep.
that's understated, even for us, because we see the aesthetic of it, and we see the non-intrinsic component of value of having beautiful spaces and livability in a community and respect for the past and attention to the future. But ultimately, it's an economic driving force, and I do believe that is almost the first thing we say at our institution. That's almost the first thing I say, because by the time I get around to the arts, their eyes glaze over.
Yep.
It's just the way it is.
So the way by which we're building this is really through relationships and being able to be there and listening to what people need, listening to what organizations need, and trying to help. And it's definitely not like sending up a bunch of fireworks or a flare gun and saying, this program, it's amazing.
Right.
It's going to take a lot of time. And,
Yes.
you know, I think that especially by focusing on city resources first and public resources first, it helps to show what the program is and what all these different possibilities are in a way that it enables the wider community to see what's being done. And especially because it is a city's program and the city's applying it to its own buildings, its own spaces, and also keeping the door open for other people to be involved, you know, it will take many years, but I think before we're at the place where it is just hardwired into how everything is done. But these next few years are going to be a lot of education by doing, right? It's going to be a lot of, we're doing this as the city, and this process is accessible to everybody. You know, especially when it comes to things like firehouses.
Right.
You know, when you think about, the city doesn't actually really own the vast percentages of firehouses. A lot of them have been deaccessioned, and they're privately owned now. They're former firehouses that are now churches. They're now social halls. They're part of the community in a very different way. So that kind of intersection allows there to be an opportunity for us to say, well, you know, firefighting history is an essential part of what the city's done, always done. And in this way, we can help those that own those spaces now that are a part of that history. And so, you know, again, the hope is that we're able to not only bring up that narrative as important, but I think to your point, Commissioner, it's an economic driver. It's meant to help people who are in those spaces that are historic and have an important narrative. If they need to apply for grants, if they need to take advantage of tax credits,
Right.
Not only are they able to do so, but that this program exists as a resource for them.
Yes.
Technical resource to say, I don't know how to apply for historic tax credits. I don't know how to do this. Can you help? And they have somebody to call that's local and not in Harrisburg or not in DC to do it.
Something that we've been successful at is that people view what we do, like the arts, as an absorber of revenue, of resources. Like we absorb, it costs money to do what we do, so we absorb, we need grants, we need this, we need that. We take money to do what we do. But the truth of the matter is, we produce vastly more much money out than we take in. And all of our money is spent, almost all of our money is spent within the community. And so we are an economic driver in the same way a grocery store or a hardware store is. We just sell a different product. But the truth of the matter is, we generate revenues greater than the revenues that we receive from any kind of grants or donations of any sort. And again, I think this kind of thing, it looks like we take the money, you know, but the truth is, saving these buildings and doing something with them and making them useful and increasing the livability generates dollars, you know, and people want to hear that, and it's true.
Matthew, were you going to go on and talk about the
I'm
report?
sorry.
Were we interrupting you the whole time, and you're?
I'm sorry.
No, this is meant to be collaborative.
Okay.
I mean, I know this is like, whoa, what are we talking about?
Right, it's a lot.
But this, as you all have mentioned over the past couple of meetings, you know, this is really essential because the nature of the program has changed, and that there is kind of not only a course that we're following, but very much a kind of guiding light of how to make this something that's integrated into what the city does, into other agencies, and also how to make it accessible to the public.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a lot of other ones other than
Oh, yeah,
to say.
that's a cool building. We should keep that building.
I know. firefighter history.
It's not that expensive.
We've been over a lot of this already. I did want to give you a sense of, because we have been talking about money and grant applications. So this fed into what our budget was for this upcoming year and what kind of funds that we approached council to have. Many of them are tied to these individual grant programs that are either offered by SHPO, offered by DCNR, and that tie into an initiative that we have. So, it's kind of trying to like spoken wheel. We have all of these projects and all of these things that we'd like to do. We want to make sure that we're being the best stewards of taxpayer dollars that we can with this. And so tying them into these grant opportunities is really what's going to be the trigger about whether or not these come into fruition. So many of the grants, their application cycle is the beginning of the year. And for CLG, they're already out. I know that for Keystone grants, they're coming in February, and with DCNR, it's in April. So the work of all of you and of me of the next couple of months is really going to be getting these applications together, making sure that there's community support, community engagement, more than we've had already at this point, and continuing to map out what next year is going to be. I think this is the last slide I had. Yep. So any other questions, comments?
Not that I have at this time. Any other questions or comments?
We can hear you. Yep.
Okay, well, I think it's great that we are defining and getting really neat goals in line, and then I hope we also are trying to, get back to helping with people's actual restoration goal projects. So anyway, I appreciate all of these different facets of preservation and that we're also willing to engage. So I think you're doing a great job.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Okay. Thank you, Matthew. Would you mind following up and sending could we have a copy of those? It'd be great to take another look at it, and then we could, maybe continue that discussion as we, in the December meeting, and, kind of maybe get to the year end here, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And I will, I cannot, I'm going to state this, make sure I get it in the phone too. I can't impress upon you how important it is, all of your roles in this process. We go back to the circles, right? There's a lot of pink, there's a lot of stuff staff is doing, but all of you are really ambassadors for this program in the community. The more that you're able to talk about kind of what's going on here in an informed way, to be able to tell people about the kind of the technical expertise, things that the program is able to help with, the better it will be in making sure it hits all the right ears in the community. So take all of this with you, and yes, I'll send out a copy. And if you ever need assistance on something or ever want to send people to me, which I know all of you have done over this past year, it really does have a substantial impact on the program's overall success.
Great. Well, thank you, Matthew. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Very good.
I'm going to go back to my corner.
Okay. So next on our agenda is Director's Report. Director Spry, and I've been waiting to give you a report, and all excited.
Just be very, very quick. So as you're hearing about these goals and objectives, I felt that it was important in this transition that the department, especially our department, have communication with the incoming administration to have a clear understanding of sort of where we've been, what we're doing currently, and where we see ourselves heading. also what kind of grants we've applied for, what kind of grants we're working on currently, and like you saw in the presentation, grants that we intend to apply for. We put together what we were calling a portfolio for the new administration, presented it to them, and from everything from what we're doing with land use to zoning to historic preservation, GIS, all of our projects that we have ongoing, and neighborhood resources and Love Your Block. So it was about a 50-page submittal, and I think it was well received. I think it was overwhelming, but it was also clear that we have a lot of work that we have currently and in the future. So I just wanted you to be aware that you were part of that portfolio and very much present in it, and an understanding of what the HRC does and the overall explanation of the Historic Preservation Program. So as we move into a new administration, we will continue to inform and communicate with our new leaders on the importance of this program and the goals and objectives that you saw here today. That's really it.
Great, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay, well, that's it for our agenda. Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'd be happy to make a motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second? Second? Melinda and Jean both second. Oh, Melinda seconds. Those in, Jean will go under a second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those against? No. Thank you so much. Great meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was
Happy
very
holidays.
informative.